is Justin Rothbart. I'm a student at Nashville Software School, and for my day job, I'm an analyst at Ingram Content Group. For my project, I am a huge video gamer, so obviously as soon as I got free reign on data, I chose video games. Video games are super important to me. My parents were really young, and some of my earliest memories are playing video games with them because they played a lot of video games when I was growing up. So I'm going to dive into mine. I chose data from Kaggle. The intention was that it would be clean data, and I was wrong about that. It wasn't that clean. So I did a lot of cleanup and really ended up with only substantial data for some of the major video game series. Some of the lesser known series either didn't have critic scores or user scores or sales data, so I had to kind of throw that aside and just focus on some of the major series. So it looks like it's just not fitting on the screen, but I designed this with intentionality that it starts off really basic, and then as you go through the tabs, it gets a little bit more granular and allows the user to interact more with the data. So the first page is a series comparison, where you can choose two series from the pre-selected list that I have and take a look at some of the statistics, some summary statistics for the series. So if you go over here, you can clear these out, and you have a list of all of the video game series that I have loaded into here. So somebody yell out a series.
Street Fighter.
Street Fighter. And somebody pick another one?
Zelda.
Oh, all right, Zelda was first. All right, so it updates. It shows the new statistics. It updates the graphics and shows just some summary statistics. I designed it after Super Smash Brothers, which is a popular fighting game series where you take people from video game series and fight them against each other, and somebody wins. So that was kind of the idea behind this. If I switch over to the scores over time, it shows you how the video game series has scored over time with regards to sales, critic scores, and user scores. And from here, if I pick, somebody yelled out Pokemon, so I'm going to pick Pokemon. From here, as I go from this tab over to the right, it's going to maintain any selections that I choose on this one. So there's some kind of, you can switch back and forth between tabs without having to reselect. That's a way of keeping the user from having to do too many interactions with the actual application itself. So here, if I scroll down, you can see the years. There's hover text to support the user in finding out the data that they're looking for. And you can just get a quick idea. Now, as I was going through it, I noticed that Pokemon is one of the series that it doesn't matter what the critics score it as, people are going to buy it. There's extreme brand loyalty to Pokemon. So even though the critic score is always worse than the user score, with the exception of right here where it's tied, sales are always constantly pretty good for Pokemon games. That wasn't true for other games, so if I go to like Street Fighter, you can see here that there's often a variance between the critic scores and the user scores, and sales, they're a little bit more correlated with the critic score as opposed to the user score. The next tab over is just a data table. So I wanted to provide people that were interested in looking for their own trends the ability to scan through the data. So there's a few different options. You can scan through the years, you can narrow down the user scores and the critic scores, and you can also search for certain things in here. So you can search for, maybe I just want PlayStation 2 games. So you can type in PlayStation, it should be PlayStation 2 games. So you can scan through that way. I also provided an analysis tab. So just some basic high-level analysis for users who didn't want to dig through data and just wanted to see kind of what the point was. And on the right, so the information is on the left, and then on the right, you can scan through and the graph will automatically update to show what you're reading about. And then the last tab that I have, which is muted right now, is a music tab. Always start your music tabs silent, so that way if somebody opens it up, it doesn't scare the crap out of them. Like that. So that was an excellent example of how to scare everybody in the room. So some of the things I did was I focused on really minimalizing the options that the user had. By reducing the amount of options that the user had to interact with, it really drives home the points that you're trying to make. So it draws eyes to where you want the eyes to be drawn to. Also, another thing that I did was try to use a lot of negative space to also focus in the eyes. If you have options all over the place, then people's eyes are going to be scattering around, and you want it to kind of centralize in here. I think that's about it. Mine's pretty quick. Did anybody have any questions about video games, just in general? Yes?
So I was curious which R packages you're using for the plots.
Good question. So I used HighCharter, which is an R wrap for a JavaScript package called HighChart, which you'll see more of later. Somebody else also used that. Any other questions?
So where were you pulling these scores from?
Yeah, so these were scraped from, I believe it's from IGN. I think that's the right way, IGN or IMG. IGN? Yeah. So a video game website where people can submit their own scores, and they also try to gather critic scores and average them out. Yeah. Yes?
You said at the beginning the data wasn't very clean.
Uh-huh.
What do you mean by that?
There was a lot of missing values. So especially for some of the lesser known games, critics don't take the time to score those games, and they also don't report sales data as cleanly as they should. So there's a lot of just null values that had to wipe out. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, thank you.